Good Monday morning. Today I would like to talk about communication and how I think there is a subtle but widespread misconception in the developer community that you can somehow improve the clarity of your communication by removing civility from it. I think that this is just a complete misconception, and in fact I'm going to make a case today that the opposite is true, that adding civility to your communication improves the clarity. I am your host, MPJ, and you are watching Fun Function.
That's your friend. It is your friend.
A couple of weeks ago, Stack Overflow posted an article titled "Stack Overflow isn't very welcoming. It's time for that to change." It talks about how too many people experience Stack Overflow as a hostile or elitist place. And this was news to absolutely no one that has visited Stack Overflow ever and have a soul. First of all, I think it's amazing that Stack Overflow is actually recognizing this and putting some effort into this. This is a great step. I tweeted this article, and one of the replies was from someone that said that they would rather have hostile and useful than friendly and a ghost town. And this commenter went on to say that if they can marry useful and nice, then more power to them. But the commenter thinks that they are going to have a hard time. I don't want to point fingers at this person because I think that this is actually a pretty common viewpoint in the developer community. I very often run across this notion in the developer community, this belief that you can somehow improve the clarity or honesty of your messaging by removing civility from it. It feels like these people have the idea that niceness and politeness and civility, that's a kind of gift wrapping paper with a bow tie that you put around your message in order to sneak it past the recipient, and it's all just unnecessary fluff. That we could communicate more effectively if we just did away with this pretty dress up of our communication. If someone is wrong, just tell them that they're wrong. Just don't dip it in sugar and stuff. Oh my god, it's warm. It's never warm in Sweden, but now it's warm. And to me, this is just such an oversimplified view of what communication is. Like, it's very tempting to want messaging and narrative to be independent of the recipient. What I mean by that is that you want, you have this wish that you could just craft the objectively clearest possible message, and then anyone could parse and interpret it. That you can write the perfect technical documentation for something and then everyone can understand it. But in the real world, there just isn't such a thing as an audience neutral message. It's just not possible to write a piece of technical documentation that can effectively be understood by developers at all levels. If you're writing the documentation for the machine learning library TensorFlow, you can write that documentation in a way that makes it really easy for people that are familiar with machine learning concepts to pick it up. And that might be a good way of writing it. A lot of people that pick up TensorFlow are familiar with machine learning concepts already. But on the other hand, there's a lot of people just playing around and getting into machine learning right now, and probably the first thing that one of the first things at least, that they're going to run into is TensorFlow. And then they run into this huge brick wall because the documentation assumes that you know a lot about machine learning. The TensorFlow people could then, of course, like move down and make the documentation more basic and explain like the machine learning concepts that they are talking about as they go. But that would add a ton of noise to the documentation for the people that do know the machine learning concepts. Also, you need to be mindful of tone. For instance, like if you're writing about some JavaScript concept to experienced JavaScript developers, then they are very confident. They're going for the info pretty quickly. They're thick-skinned. But if the person is new, they're maybe not familiar with NPM. Maybe they are they might be new developers to development in general, and they are feeling their confidence is not that high. So you need to build up a little bit of lovey-dovey cuddling into your messaging. Like, okay, this is confusing, but you're going to do fine. It's okay. Everyone is confused at this point. Maybe you need to say that. Something that you wouldn't need to say to an experienced developer. Or you might need, the developer might be hostile, you know, if it's a Java developer, C# developer that is just grudgingly learning JavaScript, then they are, you know, that at some points they're going to just be annoyed at like, oh my god, why is there a yarn and an NPM, like stuff like that, or why isn't there one cohesive way of doing classes? What is this prototype thing? Like stuff like that. And at that point you need to, if you have that kind of audience, you need to like think about, okay, we need to at least address the concerns of this person, like so that they can just move on. What I'm trying to get at here is that this thing that people that aren't well, okay, this is gonna sound condescending, but that aren't well versed in communication view as, you know, being nice or like as being fluff, is actually being mindful of who your recipient is, like the recipient of your message, of your communication. Because communication at its core is to get stuff out of your head and transfer it into the head of another person. The problem is that there's no standardized API for messages between humans. As the sender of a communication, I cannot craft a message that like is here and can then be read by and understood by all kinds of different people. That's not how communication and messaging and narrative and writing and teaching works. What I can do as a communicator is to identify and understand and target a specific target market, like a group of people. Or maybe the group is just one. Maybe I'm like talking to my colleague. So in order for my communication to be effective, I need to spend some time talking to my target market, finding out what it is that they know, what is their knowledge world. Is there an shared emotional state that they have? If it's computer programmers that are beginners, they're probably like they're probably anxious. They're probably like uncomfortable, like wondering if they're ever gonna be good enough. On the other hand, if they're developers that are like have been working with computers for 20 years plus, then they know that they are never gonna be good enough, so they're cool about it. Any communication, be it technical documentation, like a comment in a code base, be it a chat message to your partner or a romantic interest, be it a Medium article, be it a book, be it a lunch conversation at work, All communication, in order to be effective, needs to be crafted with its target audience in mind. I've run across a couple of people in my career that does this really well, that I look up to a lot, and superficially they might come across as, nice and polite people. And they are, I suppose, but I think that viewing them as such trivializes what it is that they are really doing. And what they are doing is paying attention to who their target audience is and understanding them before broadcasting their message to them. You can recognize these people because they are often, even in cases when they have a message to bring to you or to a group, they are not the first one to speak. They spend some time with you and talking to you, asking questions about who you are and where you are coming from and understanding your needs before they start talking about what they're there to talk about. Because they always craft their message for your needs, so to speak. And this makes them extraordinarily effective communicators because they have optimized their message for the recipient. So they don't communicate with general messages that are crafted to be understood by everyone and thus not effectively understood by anyone. So instead they just work with more specific targeting of messages, understanding who they are talking to. They prefer to talk individually to people, but when they need to talk to a group, they try to narrow down the group and understand that group of people before starting their communication or writing their article or whatever it is that they're doing. So you cannot achieve more clarity in your communication by removing civility, because civility, understanding your target audience and respecting your target audience and adapting your messaging to the target audience is a huge part of achieving clarity. So the next time you're about to tell someone that they are wrong, spend a little bit of time with the person, with the target market, understanding where they are and why it is that they think this way before you start communicating. That way, your message has a much higher chance of being received and understood. Because if it isn't received and understood and agreed upon, then it's basically just you shouting into the void, really. Did any of this make sense? Do you have thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments, or if you are a patron of Fun Function, let me know on the Fun forum. There is a link to a topic for this specific episode in the episode description. In case you are new, you have just watched an episode of Fun Function. I release these every Monday morning, 0800 GMT. So that you don't forget that, you can subscribe here, or maybe turn on notifications in the app if you want to. Or you can just watch another episode right now by clicking here. I am MPJ. Until next Monday morning, stay curious.